landing at a company that's financially stable and will, be able to continue to support your lifestyle after you've gone through this, lengthy interview process. If you start the conversation with, say you're applying to a product or engineering role and you're really focused on what, technology the company is using, or on the sales side, like showcasing that you understand who the customer is. Maybe you have an idea as to a new kind of market to sell to, or a sales strategy, or even just kind of sharing your.
Please welcome our guest, an experienced talent acquisition professional in the MarTech and technology sector with a passion for connecting candidates to fulfilling careers and empowering hiring managers to elevate their teams. She is all about bringing valuable expertise to the talent landscape. Let's welcome Ilana on 10 Minutes of Hiring Wisdom. Hi, Ilana. How are you doing today?
I'm good. How are you?
I am doing well. Thank you so much for joining us, Ilana. So let's get straight to it. So the first question that I have for you is, can you share some of the key insights that you have in order to employ the match and to match the candidates with the right jobs?
Sure. So from the candidate side, you mean?
From the candidate side, you mean? Yes.
Yeah. So absolutely. So I think for us here at Labster, we're an education technology company and, incredibly mission-driven organization. And so it's not just about, filling roles for us. It's really much more holistic, and our approach is very focused on finding the overall best addition to our culture, someone who's mission-driven, and but obviously still aligning with the core skills to ensure that we can kind of move forward with achieving that mission. So so for us, I mean, I think it's about having, my recommendation for candidates is to go a little bit above and beyond, just submitting your application and finding a hiring manager on LinkedIn, or reaching out, or even doing further research and, really ensuring you have an understanding of what's happening with the company. And, those are the people I tend to respond to first, and hiring managers forward those messages along. So I think really doing your due diligence and ensuring that you have additional information beyond the job description is a really great way to stand out.
Okay, no, I think that makes a lot of sense, specifically because you are honestly a number when you're applying just through Easy Apply among thousands of other
Yes.
applicants. So if you're applying, doing your due diligence, and actually putting in the extra effort where the hiring manager can actually put a face to your resume even before they go over it, is something that will give you a competitive advantage. But thank you so much for sharing that, Ilana. Ilana, a follow-up question from that would be a lot of people do say that, okay, reach out to hiring managers. How would you tell candidates to phrase or write their messaging in a way that would get them a response?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think if you start the conversation with, say you're applying to a product or engineering role and you're really focused on what, technology the company is using, or on the sales side, like showcasing that you understand who the customer is. Maybe you've, have an idea as to a new kind of market to sell to, or a sales strategy, or even just kind of sharing your overall information on, how you've been successful in the past is, I think, a great place to start.
Okay, no, I think commonalities always help because you can relate to someone and then just being like, oh, this is what I can bring to the table and XYZ. So thank you for sharing that, Ilana. I think, Ilana, one of the hardest parts of a person in the talent acquisition space is to ensure that not only are you finding candidates that will be a great fit for your company, but also the candidate is happy. So how do you assess the talent in a way where you ensure that the candidate would come and succeed in the role?
Yeah, I think a lot of that has to do with the level of the role. And that's something internally we're working really hard on to ensure that there's clarity on the level. And I think, really good questions for the candidate to ask are, of course, to ask about growth, but also growth within the specific role. And I think, we don't want to, even if someone is an excellent fit, we don't want to hire them into a role where we know they'll be bored in 6 months, or, we won't, being a 200-person Series C startup, like we might not have the next role for them in 6 months. And so for us, it's really about evaluating what does the next step look like for the person within the organization, and is that, taking on more responsibility, a promotion, moving to a different team. But yeah, I think the level is one of the biggest pieces, and making sure that we're bringing in people who can be successful for a long time in the current role that they're coming into.
I think no, that makes a lot of sense because I mean, at the end of the day, you don't want to hire someone who will come in, stay for 3 months, and then leave because it's not only a waste of time on their end, but it's the company that's going to waste a lot of time as well. Because essentially, it takes a while for the candidate to be onboarded. It takes a while to give the candidate the right training, and then they're like, "Okay, it's time for me to leave." So I
Right,
mean, that
right.
exactly, and you're just
And
like,
on the
I
candidate side, it's like nobody really likes interviewing, I don't think. So
exactly.
we're not pretending like that's not the reality. So it's better for both the candidate to do their due diligence. And of course, on our end, we're responsible for bringing in people at the right level.
No, no, I think the holistic approach that you take would ensure that the candidates that come in are more likely to succeed. So thank you so much for sharing that, Ilana. Ilana, I'd love to understand your perspective on the current hiring landscape. So people are being laid off, but there's a lot of companies that are hiring. So there's constantly reports coming up where they're like, the economy is getting better, the numbers are picking up. So what is your approach? How is your company doing in terms of the current landscape, and how do you see the market proceeding?
Yeah, good question. I mean, it's been obviously a wild, 3 years to be in the talent acquisition space, so different from pre-pandemic times, but just extreme highs and lows, just as many businesses have gone through, which is obviously why, we're now seeing things shift to being a bit more, in the employer's, best interest, or kind of in our favor. But I am still seeing it that way in some roles and some functions, but it's definitely still competitive in others. We are still hiring, but we are hiring very strategically, and either bringing in new skill sets that we don't have as our business evolves and our technology evolves, or bringing in, of course, people if somebody leaves and maybe with a slightly different skill set, or moving people around. And I think just from my colleagues in the industry, I'm hearing a lot of that as well. But unfortunately, as we meet with people, we are still hearing that there are a lot of layoffs happening. And I think that won't quite calm down just yet, unfortunately. But
Yeah.
I think it will kind of even out to be back to a normal place from hopefully pre-pandemic times too.
No, I think you mentioned something important, which is strategically hiring. I think one of the biggest mistakes a lot of companies made during the post-pandemic, or initially during the pandemic, was they went on a hiring spree where they were like, let's attract some of the best talent, let's keep them. And then they were like, okay, the work is done. Now what do I do? How do I reserve the cash flow? And then that's when the layoff started. So I'm glad to hear that companies are much more cautious regarding their decisions, because at the end of the day, it's someone's life that's in your hands. So ensuring that they have a steady income, they have a house, they have a home, they have a family to feed. All those things keeps companies grounded, which is something that companies should take into consideration. And I'm glad your company is one of them. Ilana, last question. So you mentioned your company is hiring. I'd love to see what are some of the openings that you have, and what does Labster exactly do?
Yeah, great question. Maybe I'll start with what Labster does to give context into some of the roles that we're hiring for. So Labster is an education technology company, and our software solution is focused on virtual science learning, and specifically immersive learning within the science space and nursing. We acquired a really wonderful company called UBSIM almost 2 years ago now, and they're really focused on the VR component, and focused on nursing education and programs specifically. So we sell to higher education institutions globally. We're in over 50 countries, which is incredible. And
Wow.
our mission is to change the way students learn, not just to be this temporary fix because of a pandemic with everybody going home. Students, the landscape of how students are learning has completely evolved, and it's required for educational institutions to evolve with that. So it's not easy, but we're really excited about what we're accomplishing here, and kind of looking to build on that. So open roles really across all different functions within our business. So we have Unity developers open, we have product roles open. We're looking for a vice president of design and user experience right now to elevate just the maturity of the design within our product. We have sales executives, we have customer success roles open. And yeah, we're really hiring all across the board.
Oh, wow. Okay. First of all, wow,
Yeah,
operating in 50 different countries, that is absolutely amazing.
it's
I think
incredible.
your
Yeah,
camp, it is. And I think specifically during the pandemic, I think a lot of things changed. Learning education was one of them. So I'm glad to see companies are actually doing something to ensure where people can still continue learning in the best way possible. So thank you so much for sharing that, Ilana. And thank you so much for sharing all the openings. So if there's anyone who is interested, they can definitely reach out and apply. But Ilana, our time is up. Last question would be centered out, if there's one piece of key advice that you might have for people who are currently laid off, what would it be?
yeah. I would just say to stay positive. It's not an easy time right now, and I know that can be demotivating. But yeah, I think just staying positive and ensuring that your next role is a place that you're genuinely excited to be in. Obviously, as we spoke, people need to pay bills, and that's crucial. People have lives to support, but I think it's really important to not just jump into a role just to kind of pay the bills and then leave 2 months later because you didn't do your due diligence. It's really important to still do your due diligence on the candidate side and ensure that you're landing at a company that's financially stable and will be able to continue to support your lifestyle after you've gone through this lengthy interview process.
Yeah, okay, no, I think that's very important because I think a lot of people just take up jobs where they're like, oh yeah, I'll pay the bills, and then they're like, I'm not happy. What do I do now? So thank you so much for sharing that, Ilana. But our time is up. It was a pleasure learning from you, your experiences, what you learned along the way about your current company, and just your approach to hiring and making sure that candidates find careers that are purpose driven and fulfilling. Thank you so much.
Wonderful. Thank you.